Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, ministers, and young people, thank you very much, first of all, to you, Prime Minister, for making the time available. We're very, very happy to have here a group of very dynamic young people, many of whom I know quite well, and who've been participating recently in this, as part of the Europe Day activities, in a conference, the Western Balkans Youth Conference, Think Forward, Youth Action Now. This has taken place in Mukatsa over 2 days, and the groups that were formed there addressed a series of important issues. First of all, regional cooperation and reconciliation. Secondly, climate change and the Green Deal. And thirdly, mental health, issues chosen by young people themselves as being important. We had the pleasure of a presentation to the EU heads of mission and also ambassadors from the region earlier in the week, but I think it's really great that they have this opportunity now to present to you and to have an exchange of views with you, Prime Minister, and with the ministers. But the purpose of this meeting is not to listen to me, but to listen to the young people, and so with your agreement, I would leave it to them to take up and to explain what they've been doing and what they're thinking. Lindy.
Dear Your Excellency, Mr. Ambassador Geer, dear Prime Minister, Mr. Kovachevsky, today's government takeover by youngsters shall also serve as a reflection of how the decision-making should function in the region when talking about our needs and our problems. We say no more to tokenism and decoration of youngsters, and yes to establishing an environment where youth are part of decision-making processes. The Blue Room, or the Regional Cooperation and Reconciliation Group, has worked on the topic of regional cooperation and reconciliation in the region. And for us, the regional cooperation is the sine qua non for the development of our countries in the region. Young people, we usually are attacked by elder people that young people only complain. But today we are saying to all of you that young people don't only complain, but they also offer solutions to the problems that we have. We do hope that you are willing to not only listen to our problems, but most importantly to start with the implementation of the solutions that we offer to the challenges we have. But before going to our solution in the regional cooperation, I wanted to share something which is very important in the spirit of the regional cooperation and in the Green Deal part, which is that what we discussed earlier with all groups is that the governments of Western Balkan 6 must commit to making Western Balkan greener. Because as we know that we are having severe challenges on the energy transition and also environmental protection. Environmental issues are still marginalized and need to be considered as one of the key issues for the future of the region. For that reason, because as part of the discussions we had with all of the groups during our 3-day conference, we decided that it's important for the governments in WB6 to commit to bringing down air pollution in general. And also governments in WB6 must commit to developing a plan and investing the necessary resources to clean the 6 most polluted rivers and cities in the Western Balkans. Now, going back to our initiative from the Blue Room is called something really interesting. It's called Burek, or I will tell it in details. It's Balkan United Youth Reconciliation Educational Camp, with the aim to empower youngsters in the region through the values of reconciliation and remembrance. And we are aiming to organize a summer camp where youngsters from the region will get together and get prepared for the challenges of the future. The curricula of the summer camp will be carefully tailored to explore more ideas of youngsters by including interesting lectures and workshops on cultural remembrance in the Western Balkans, critical analysis of national and historic dealing with the past, and so on. Furthermore, the curricula will focus to treat the topics of civic education because we believe that education should make the citizens more aware of the situation, and the topic of media literacy because one of the hardest and most challenging fights that we have nowadays is the fight against the propaganda and fake news. This initiative will also serve as a driver of peace and prosperity in the region. And the analogy of Burek is very interesting because it has 6 tribes. We are 6 countries in the Western Balkan 6. And of course, we have some problems on what kind of flavors do we want to eat the Burek. But in the end of the day, no one here can say that you don't like Burek. So in the end of the day, we are all united in that delicious food. So that's why the analogy of this is very important. And for the end, I would say that there's no time left for losing anymore and no time for only talking. We need to stop the rhetoric of saying all the time youth is the future and youth is important. If you are important to you and if you care about youth, you need to show it to us by less talking and more acting. If you want also to be remembered as good statesmen and politicians, we need and you all need to stop thinking about the next elections, and you need to start thinking about the next generation. And the next generation today is seated in this round table discussing the solutions with all of you. Thank you.
Good day, Your Excellencies. Respected ministers, Prime Minister, and respected audience. First and foremost, I would like to show my gratitude to the European Union and the European Ambassador, as well as the Prime Minister and the ministers here today for allowing us, for our voice to be heard and make us feel more engaged and more incorporated in the institutions, not only outside fighting for civic action. I'm here today representing the Green Room. The Green Room's work field was ecology, Green Deal, climate change, but more specifically, the Green Agenda, as all of the representatives there on the conference were from the region. Even though climate change has been a topic for decades, we're still yet to see some specific and real action made to end what we had done to the Earth. As young people, these past few days, we worked hard on analyzing the situation amongst all of the Western Balkan 6 countries. We looked into the legislation and on the nationally determined contributions made of the Chapter 27, which is the chapter of environment. Unfortunately, the results are not good. We have an average score of 2.3 in implementation of the chapter. Macedonia has only 2. We feel that part of why the situation is like this is because youth are not participating in the decision-making processes before they end. So, what we propose is a solution based on 3 key segments. A network connecting green ambassadors who will go through a process of decision-making whilst it's happening, not after it's done, as well as connect the youth from the region through a digital platform. So the 3 key segments are green ambassadors, network, and platform. The green ambassadors will be young people who are actively known in the field of eco-activism. They will not only represent the voices of people, and have like a representative figure. They will directly be the voice of all of the youth from the region in the high-level discussions. They will represent ways we can impact more than only through civic action and the NGO sector. They will be 5 young individuals from each of the Western Balkan 6 countries, each representing the key areas of the Green Agenda, which are decarbonization, depollution, circular economy, sustainable food systems and rural areas, and finally biodiversity. So, we can already implement this, and you may ask how. We have legislations on youth that are being implemented right now. And why not improve them and add on young activists from the field of ecology who can be a part of these councils and then contribute to the green ambassadors to show local problems on a national level and regional level through the network, which is the next segment. The network will represent all of the green ambassadors connecting on sessions and discussing ways they can share practices, positive case studies, and negative case studies in order to find innovative solutions to local, national, and regional ecological issues. And the final segment is the digital platform. We know that we live in a digital era, and we know that the platform is very accessible to every single individual from the region. Why not utilize this to hear every single young people's voice? Allow them to comment, criticize, and suggest on draft versions of legislations and policies regarding the environmental protection. Why not give them the opportunity to send in initiatives to end ecological problems from their communities? Why not allow them access to affordable and sustainable product services from whole of the region? This is what we want to achieve through the platform, and we have already prototyped it, as you can see on the briefs. So finally, we want to tell you why we want to do this. We want to do it for the young people amongst you who are fighting for climate change, who are talking about the topic, but they do not feel heard only from the civic sector. They're not heard from the institutions, the government, the local authorities. They're not being heard by anyone except the NGO sector. And we want to change this. So, if you want to know how will our community look like if this was implemented, it will look like a time where young people feel heard, a time where young people play a part in the decision-making process and high-level discussions, where youth feel more secure about their future, and where young people are more than just young people. They are the change makers. So help us put the green in youth and the youth in green. Thank you.
Почитувани присутни, јас сум
Dear guests, I'm Mimoza Serafimovska, and I'm a representative of the students in the Senate at the University of St. Cyril and Methodius. As a medicine student and at the same time part of an age group that is sensitive to the psychological impacts coming from COVID-19 pandemics, the topic of mental health issues is very important to me. One of the ways in which I could inform myself on the topic and remain socially responsible citizen and provide solutions to resolve the problems was to be part of the initiative that focuses on mental health issues and youth activism. The Western Balkan Youth Conference was the right occasion where I could be actively involved and to try and find solutions for the problems regarding mental health. When discussing with the other participants at the conference, we concluded that we are facing two problems. The first one is the stigma regarding mental health issues, because it is a taboo for the citizens in our country, and usually people who want to receive some psychological support are actually marked by the society that they're sick. This prevents them further to advance throughout their career and social life. The second problem that we faced was insufficient access to places offering psychological assistance. This is very important to the young people because we are not able to financially allow ourselves this kind of assistance. Furthermore, we found solutions that we would like to offer you. Regarding the first issue, the solution is to try and reduce the stigma. First, we want to implement campaigns with people who have great publicity and that would attract media attention. This would be people with great impact in the society, and we would like to make the topic of mental health issue more acceptable to all. The second method is creating a platform that would promote healthy life habits and advice for dealing with stress and anxiety. This platform should be in the form of website or an application and to be very intuitive and user-friendly, also available for all age groups. Regarding the second problem, insufficient access, the solution has already been voted, but it should be implemented and modified. In January 2020, the Assembly of the Republic of North Macedonia adopted a law on youth policies, and this is the first legal solution in the Republic of North Macedonia that guarantees youth participation and recognizes young people. The law on youth participation and policies foresees service for the young people, or a method in which the institutions can be closer to the youth in order to help them develop and grow. As such, within the frames of the law, youth centers have been foreseen, while the municipalities should have young people, young officers that would manage these centers and offices. This is very important to us. The youth centers are places where programs are planned that should improve the personal and social life as well as the professional life of the youth. According to the law, each municipality is legally binded to open a youth center. This means that we should have 80 youth centers. According to the report of the National Council of Macedonia prepared in 2022, that provides information on the implementation of the law, we can see that we have only 8 youth centers in the whole country. Although the deadline for implementation of the legal obligation has not expired, we appeal for these youth centers to be opened as soon as possible. These youth centers are places that can advance a lot, and our solution regarding the mental health issues is to employ psychologists and professionals who will provide support to all young people who are dealing with mental health issues. These psychologists would offer free assistance and would be available for the young people. They would be a shelter for youngsters who are facing certain obstacles. By avoiding the stigma and the stereotypes that accompany the psychological support, the mental health issues should not be ignored. We should discuss more and more, because each young person that has vulnerable mental health should be assisted, because everyone can assist and contribute to the society. We are only using a small percentage of the youth centers, and by using them, we can improve the overall psychological image of our youngsters. May is the month on raising the awareness on mental health issues, so I appeal to you to make some changes in that direction. Thank you.
I'd like to also thank the Skopje office of the Regional Youth Cooperation Office, RICO, as well as the Regional Cooperation Council, which was part of this initiative. Prime Minister, over to you.
Thank you, благодарам. Јас ќе се обратам на македонски.
I will speak in Macedonian. First of all, I would like to welcome these young ladies and this gentleman who are today our guests. In fact, we are their guests because they are taking over the government. Distinguished Ambassador Gear and Distinguished Deputy Ambassador Vassala. I have my ministers here and the Deputy Minister in the government. Dear ladies and gentlemen, yesterday I was in Brussels and exactly on meetings with the leaders of the Western Balkan 6. And having in mind that the meeting ended quite late, I had the option to have the Deputy Prime Minister, and at 4 a.m. I decided to get up at 4 a.m. and to be here, not to be substituted by the Prime Minister, because I want to be here with the young people and to hear what they are doing in the area of education and social activism, and to hear more about their actions and activities. Some of you are known to me through the discussions that you had in the government when I wasn't president of the government, in the commissions, in the parliament, and that is why I am honored to be part of this meeting today. Also, I'm pleased to hear all the opinions that were presented on very important topics, because these topics are not important only for the young people, but also important for the older people, but also the future generations coming after you. Blendy said one thing that I said several days ago on one brief. The leaders should not adopt decisions related to the elections, but should adopt decisions referring to better future better future for the future generations. And I'm glad that I heard this from you, because young people are those who should bring changes, and they brought changes in this country as we see it now. Why? Several days ago, I had a lecture at the university where I worked before becoming a member of the government, and in practice, I wanted to explain the students that unlike the Western European countries that have continuity in the past 60 or maybe 70 years, and we have a large discontinuity here in the Western Balkan countries. Why discontinuity? Because at the end of the 80s, first we needed to change the system of the country from socialist into capitalist. This completely changed the economic relations. Furthermore, we lived in a country that was federative country. It was a consolidated system of several republics. It had consolidated energy, economic system, market system, and it was related to various associations of countries at that time. When this was dissolved, we had another discontinuity, because first, it is not easy to consolidate large systems when nuclear power plant will remain in Slovenia, where thermal power plants will remain in Bosnia, and when power plants will remain in Bosnia and Serbia and in the other republics. Afterwards, we went through a hyperinflation period not seen by many countries in Europe after the Great Depression. We went through this in the 90s. The following discontinuity was a lack of funds for investments, because the banking system, due to this hyperinflation, was completely dissolved, and we needed a law on sanation of banks so that they can be private banks and to be sold to foreign investors. This was followed by a discontinuity from the wars that took place in Yugoslavia. This was a total decline of the values. The honest ones were seen as naive, and criminals were seen as successful. Then we had the conflict in Kosovo, in our immediate vicinity, and in 2001 we had another discontinuity with the conflict in the Republic of Macedonia at that time. In times of such discontinuity, we had to provide continuity in the country, and this was possible only if we had an objective, because each ship needs good wind. This objective to us was the European integration of the country, and many difficult decisions were made, decisions that have not been made by many countries, and that is why today we are a NATO member state, and we are a step closer to opening negotiations with the European Union. Also, we worked on enhancing the economy, because all the republics in Yugoslavia had its economic role, had its economic philosophy within that system. And our country, together with Kosovo and Montenegro predominantly, were regions that were considered as agricultural and as wine producers, and of course labor-intensive industries such as the textile industry and the metal processing industry. Young people from the beginning of the foundation of this country, through their entrepreneurial ideas and through their contacts with contacts from abroad, managed to introduce the new industries in our country, and this means increase in the productivity, increase in economic growth, increase in GDP. And if we compare GDP of Macedonia in 1991 and 1992 and today, then you will see that it has been increased by several times. And if we look at the standard, it is also increased. Why? Yes, our population has been probably reduced, but also it is true that today we have more residential units compared to that time. Why? Because the economic standard has grown in good part of the country. And now young people can leave their homes sooner and earlier and to found their families. Of course, this is very characteristic for the Western countries. You mentioned the following challenges, that is the energy transition. Unfortunately, due to all these events that I mentioned, has not been done. But of course, each crisis is an opportunity, and therefore now it is high time to make this energy transition. This energy transition is impossible to be done individually for each country because our countries are very small. Albania, Kosovo, our country, Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece, because this transition involves large investments, sophisticated technologies, and especially having in mind that this is a period of return investments for more than 20 years. That is why it is very important to have the regional cooperation. You see that I mentioned countries that are not only from the Western Balkan 6, but also countries that are EU members. And it is significant to have this cooperation and it needs to be advanced because only through regional cooperation and by using funds, and everyone who invests in a fund wants to have a larger return of the investment. And it is possible to make this energy transition. The energy transition means reducing the pollution, investment in new technologies, and these new technologies require new types of education. And that is why when I was young, most sought professions were management, marketing, because these were the newest challenges at that time. Now we have the IT, artificial intelligence, neuromedicine, neuroscience as new ones. And this is because in practice, new industries and their development are going in that direction. That is why I say that young people are the ones who bring continuity and development. And I would go back to the very beginning. You will be the ones who will make the next big step in productivity, in economic development in the country. And it is good that you have started now to work together with your peers from the region, from the other Western Balkan 6 countries. Here we have my colleagues who work on the Open Balkan Initiative, which in practice is implementation of the 4 pillars of Europe. It is in full compliance with the principles, but it is not a substitute for EU membership, nor it is a substitute for the Berlin process that includes all the countries, but it is implementation of a regional cooperation and integration that we need from the aspect of exchange of skills, knowledge, education of young people. We needed to increase the cultural exchange. We needed to for free movement of people, and especially young people such as yourselves. This should be enabled and very simplified. For example, if you worked in Albania, North Macedonia, so that you can work in one of the other countries without any additional administrative obstacles, permits, through a single ID number that would be introduced as one of the tasks. Why recording a video or music production in one country when you can do that together with colleagues from the three countries? And at the end of the day, why Ohrid to be advertised only here and the Albanian touristic places or the Serbian touristic places only in Albania and Serbia, respectively, when they can be presented on a larger market? They told me to be brief, but I was not, because I wanted to include all the topics. Mental health issues are very specific, and everyone should speak on their professional background. That is why we called the Deputy Minister. Regarding the legal solutions, we have the Minister on Labor and Social Policy, and regarding all funds, we have the Deputy Prime Minister on European integrations. And when talking on the Green Deal, the Minister of Environment has the most difficult task, because in conditions of energy crisis, we as a government and all the other governments must use all the capacities, and unfortunately these are not green, but on the contrary. But at the same time, we introduced some large projects. First, I think that we completed the first phase of cleaning up Linden in Ohis. We opened several of the photovoltaic power plants. This would have not been possible without the assistance of the European Union. We had Deputy Ambassador Vassal on all the openings, and of course representatives from the World Bank, because we cannot do this alone. We always need partners for such projects, and the European Union is our biggest partner, especially on these topics. Without any further ado, we can talk in detail on all the topics, and we can start the Q&A session where you will have all of the ministers on your disposal. Maybe even we will ask some questions. Blindy, you're the Prime Minister, so speak up.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for your summa summarum on what the government is doing in tackling all these issues that we mentioned as youth coming from the region. But I think now it's the time where we would want to get some direct, not political type of answers from US ministers on how you are actually working on the topic of Green Deal, on regional cooperation, and also on the legislation part of the mental health, so we can know afterwards what kind of follow-up questions we can ask you in order to know what should we do to implement our initiatives that we mentioned. So I think it's your time now to speak up on our solutions. Yes, please.
Respected Ambassador, Your Excellency Mr. Gir, respected Prime Minister, colleagues, Minister, Deputy Minister, members of our government, dear guest. Shortly, I will speak as a Deputy Minister of Health. The Ministry of Health has taken part many activities in this period. So I will mention that this week is the week of the women reproductive health, with the topic of implementing and improving the level of human papillomavirus vaccination in a young population. And as a doctor, I will say that the level of this vaccination is very low at our country. Also, this week is the week of the nurses, and one of the topic point is especially mental health in a young population. Yesterday, I was take part of the ceremony of the nurses, and there was a very pleased performance of one of your colleagues on the high medical school, Panche Karajozov, especially about the mental health. Also, this is the week of the war about the skin cancer, with a topic and the point of melanoma malignum. And I will mention you that as a doctor, one of the 5 people is diagnosed with a very late stage of this type of the cancer. Also, at the last days of this month, the May, is the day of multiple sclerosis, where we, as a Ministry of Health, will take part in these events. I will say my advice, not as a deputy minister, but as a doctor, as a neurosurgeon, also the teacher of the medical faculty. You, the youth population of our country, you must be more visible. You must be strong, brave. You must take part, the active participation of all events, of all activities what are organized about the health in our country. And also with your passive tape via the social networks, also you must help us as doctors, as medical workers, to improve the level of vaccination. You saw in the last 2 years that Macedonia was the country with vaccination almost about the 50%. You must help us. We must improve all the health, and that is the only way how to improve the health in all population. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Minister of Health. And I think we can all agree that we want so much to cooperate, but the cooperation should be on two sides, not platonic way, but on a two-way. So we also help you all on promoting the vaccination part, but we also get from institutions the help that we need. And thank you very much for your speech. Now I want to give the word to the Minister of Labor and Social Policy, Mrs. Tranchevska.
Thank you. As a government and as a ministry, in the past period, we created high-quality policies and measures that increase the participation of young people at the labor market. And these are measures that have been part of the operational plan on employment. Over 30% of the young people participated in these measures. Two of the most used measures, where most of the young people have shown interest, is the self-employment measure. There are plenty of businesses that have been open in the IT sector and that are all led by young people, both women and men. And businesses that we are monitoring throughout the years and have shown growth of the business, starting from 1 to 2 employees in the first year to multifold increase of the employees. This shows that the measure has been very successful. It has been used by the right people, and the support that is being provided by the government is used by the right people. and beside self-employing, these young people employ other young people. The other measure that has been used 100% and comes at times when we're striving towards the IT are the trainings on IT skills and trainings that provide the young with certificates, licenses that open many possibilities for employment. Employment on jobs that have been well paid. They can work here, but for foreign companies or maybe domestic companies in the IT sector for great monthly salaries. The law on internship is under the authority of the Ministry of Labor and Social Policy, and it enables all young people who in the process of education have been working can have internships in state institutions to gain additional trainings and to become more competitive on the labor market with skills and competences that will provide them with better employment and better contribution in the institutions that have employed them. And of course, the guarantee for the young people. We are a country that is the single country beyond the EU that implements such program and that provides excellent results for young people who, upon applying in the employment agencies, can have trainings and skills that they very much need so that they can be competitive at the labor market and to find employment in companies that provide good salaries for young people. Of course, I would briefly like to mention the law on youth monetary assistance that provides the young people upon completion of their higher education and are employed in the manufacturing sector. They receive 3,000 dinars by the country, and the interest for this allowance has been quite large by the young people and the real sector. In 2022, 3,500 young people would be included in this program for youth allowance. So this will provide bigger salaries for the young people, plus 3,500 dinars more to their salary.
Dear Minister of Labor and Social Policy, now to not lose any more time, I would want to give the word to the Minister of Ecology, Mr. Nureddini, to tell us a bit about the Green Deal and how much is promoted in our country and how much is the government is doing on that manner. So maybe we can help on promoting that more through the EU Green Ambassador initiative that the Green Group has worked upon.
First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to reply to some of your questions and remarks. The future Prime Ministers, the current Prime Minister, dear Ambassador, dear colleagues, dear other future leaders in your aspect. First of all, you actually opened up quite a lot of things, quite a lot of topics. The Green Agenda is a very big word, short but big, what it contains and what it actually really means. Now, you opened up circular economy, air pollution, energy transition, climate change, sustainable development, sustainable food consumption, waste management, legislation, etc. I'm going to try and put this in a nutshell and do it quickly for you. What have we done so far? First of all, I'd like to inform you that we've actually passed more than 15 laws in Parliament over the last 2.5 years. One of the key laws we passed in Parliament was the ambient on air quality, which you mentioned on air pollution. which means that now we actually described and defined who's responsible to do what in the current situation. As the Prime Minister mentioned earlier, it is an absolute issue we have. Over the last few years, we have been declining in the sense of the air pollution. It's getting better. And I've been saying this from the beginning. It's not something we can resolve immediately, unfortunately. It's something over decades that's been building up in our country. Last month, the month before that, we finally have the scientific data stating exactly where pollution comes from. In the past, we've only been saying analysis, but now we finally have, together with the University of Stip, declared that the majority of the air pollution in the city of Skopje comes from biomass. Biomass means heating. So until we change the manner of the way we heat our homes, our public buildings, our municipal buildings, unfortunately, we will continue having that issue. We have invested, we have a plan in place, we've created a register which is online for the public to see, for you to see. Which buildings heat with what? The state buildings. And those are the ones we're actually tackling. We have a strategy in place, we're working together with the different institutions to change the heating methods. We've passed 6 laws on waste management. Finally have a legal basis to actually work and build the infrastructure in our country. Over the last 30 years, unfortunately, no investment has gone into any landfills, no transfer stations, no trucks, no containers. We passed 6 new laws, which goes on the basis of the principle, all harmonized with the EU directive, polluter pays. He or she who pollutes needs to contribute to the collection of waste management. We are working on financing the whole structure. We will be building landfills. Unfortunately, we'd love to say zero waste is our dream. It is a dream, but it's not a target. It's not a goal we can achieve yet. So we will be building waste landfills across the country. We are finally finalizing the financial instrument through EBRD, working together with the EU as well, and it will be built. We will be placing containers on the streets for waste selection. The fee that our citizens have been paying for the biodegradable plastic bags, which is 25 cents per bag, we think is the right way to go. We know that I'm not the most loved minister by some citizens who pay that, but trust me, I think the majority appreciate it. Those funds will be reinvested back into the citizens' streets, which means we're going to buy containers for you to select plastic, cans, Tetra Pak, etc. Because that means less landfilling, more recycling, more reuse, and a healthier surrounding for us. I'm going to tell you a little story, actually, because you want something non-political. I recently had a chat with my son, and he's 12 and a half, and I'm trying to explain to him what I'm doing, what my job is. He thinks being minister is interesting. He doesn't find it cool, by the way, so choose your career wisely for the future. I was telling him that we're currently working on the law on industrial emissions. He wasn't too interested about that. I told him we're finalizing the law on water. Didn't tickle his interest either. I told him about nature protection. He said, don't you protect it already? It's not my job. I said, true, that is the Minister of Environment. When I told him about the law on climate change, that's what really interested him. He said, great, so what are you doing? I said, well, we have a law already. We're ready to propose it. But there's this thing, I have a question and I need support. I want to implement carbon taxing into law on climate change. Funnily enough, I didn't expect this from my 12-year-old son. His reaction was, but Dad, don't you think the private sector is going to be against you? Because they're the ones who have to pay for it. However, though, this is not only about us achieving the enhanced NDC to the Paris Agreement, which is a very ambitious one, by the way, and we will achieve it. This is about preparing our economy for the future. Even though maybe the private sector might not be for it, we will start with very small values, by the way. And this is where I need your support as the Green Ambassadors to talk about carbon taxing, to talk about implementing it into the economy, into the energy production, because we will start with small values. If we don't do that now and have a transitional phase, our economy will come to a standstill when we finally become a member of the EU, and we will have to apply the carbon taxing into our economy. So if I may ask you for your support as future leaders, I need you to support me on carbon taxing and the legislations we're passing, but not only just passing them, implementing them. You're the ones that are going to be implementing it tomorrow. We will pass the laws today. It'll be your job to implement them tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister. Maybe we can decide that after this meeting in the next few weeks, you can invite the initiative group that started the Green EU Ambassadors, and then we can start actually creating a concept on really promoting the Green Deal and the importance of the fighting towards climate change. Now I will be giving my word to Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Maric.
Thank you, Blendy. I'm not going to take a lot of your time because, yeah, my colleagues already said a lot. I would just suggest to keep your attention to the programs that can be very beneficial for the young people. Visit regularly the website of the National Agency for European Educational Programs, Exchange Programs, Erasmus. Be active in your high schools and universities. And I think that you should push actually your professors in the establishment of your universities, if you're still university students, some of you, or high school students, to apply for these programs, because those are really priceless, and those are esteemed to be most successful programs of the European Union. Ambassador knows that Erasmus has been, the budget for Erasmus has been increased seriously just because the results of the interconnection of the young people are tremendous at European level. I would address the same message to RICO at regional level, because I think that a lot of these exchanges have been done, and those are really success story. But I think we can do even more, and we should use the initiatives like both Berlin process, where RICO is, but also Open Balkan, to instigate higher activity of young people, higher exchange, even working practice in different countries, short-term visits, short-term projects that will engage young people to work in other countries, because these personal links and personal experiences are the best asset for the future. Of course, I would at the end say that youth activism is something that should go outside these walls. So I know that some of you have been very active in the society, and my strong advice would be to stay active in the society, because most of the people, or all of the people that you see sitting on the side of decision makers today, 15 years ago or 20 years ago have been youth activists and very active in the society. So once you incept in yourself the need to be active in the society, it never goes away. So I would just suggest to be clear in your goals, loud in your articulation, radical in your approach, but also positive in creating new values. That is the most important thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Deputy Prime Minister. Before going with the Q&A session, we have only left the Deputy Minister of Education, Mr. Aliu. I left you on purpose in the end because as Prime Minister, my favorite topic is education, so that's why I left you in the end.
Thank you, Mr. Future Prime Minister Blendy. Dear Ambassador, dear guest, почитуван Premier, почитувани министри.
Distinguished Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, Ministers, I would speak in Macedonian, and I would try to be very brief, because what I want to say has already been said by my colleagues. And I will reflect on the retrospective made by the Prime Minister, because we are the generation that lived in a system, and we needed to change that system. I'm happy to see that your generation of students and high school students will not deal with the issues that were developed by us in the societies, but want to achieve some other objectives in their lives and in their activism. No matter whether these are issues related to education, to environment, or to developing creative ideas and opinions. The Deputy Prime Minister also mentioned the opportunities, as well as the Minister on Environment. All my colleagues mentioned the opportunities for young people, and all these areas are related to education. Of course, education is the essence, is the foundation for developing all the other activities. The Ministry of Education sees issues in all levels of education: primary education, high school education, university education. And what you said, this is not one-way street. We are focusing on the student, on the new concept on education, and our approach is focused on that. We want to put the student in the center, in the focus, and we want to change the classic method of education. We want to address the needs and the interests of the students. The other level that is being developed by us in high school education is following the Western modules and Western countries, and that is why I'm very pleased with the fact that this year we have a request for opening of dual classes in high school in vocation, because these students will be prepared to contribute to the country in the areas and sectors for which they have been educated. They will be able to focus on some specific sectors, and this will become reality for them. And I do hope that they will focus more on contributing to the country and the companies that employ and train them. This, of course, will be conducted by with the support of the Swiss Embassy and other countries. Regarding the high school education, I wouldn't even like to mention this because it was mentioned by Deputy Prime Minister Maricic. All the programs offered by the country and the government for our students to use the credit transfer system to be compatible throughout the world. It is a fact that a lot of our young high schoolers are very competent and can enroll prestigious universities. I'm not saying that they should leave the country, but I want to say that they are ready. They have the knowledge as other students in the other developed countries. Without any further ado, I think the Ministry of Education is here to take into consideration the needs of both high school students and university students. Thank you.
The Minister of Education, now we have approximately around 8 minutes of questions from your side, and then just please ask your question. Maybe it would be better if you direct it to the concrete institution, so they can only, so we can only have one answer and to not lose time with this part. Just raise your hand if you want. Philip, yes.
Hello, my name is Filip Milinkoski. I'm a young European ambassador. So first I'd like to thank His Excellency, EU Ambassador Mr. Geer, Mr. Prime Minister, new ministers and fellow guests. So upon our discussion, fruitful discussion in the youth conference, and with my colleague Blendi, regarding, I'd like to touch more upon the idea that we've come up with, our initiative for regional cooperation and reconciliation. So my question would address the Vice Prime Minister for European integration, how we can contribute to our country's integration into the European Union by implementing this idea on a regional level, and as well as, so to say, facilitating progress and cooperation among our peers in the six Western Balkan countries. And I'd also like to mention, as an element of this program, which we hope to implement, would be the rotation of it, if you may, of this forum, potential forum, which would take place in all 6 countries on a yearly basis. So this is, my question would address you and what you think we would, whether we would accomplish something in the areas of European integration, how we can, for example, make this project even more prosperous. So.
All these easy questions, thank you. Well, I think that first of all, we need to keep the youth component in the regional cooperation, but we also need to keep the youth component in the whole process of European integration. Working with youth and working of youth and in the core of the youth activism, it's actually the matter of European values. This is why it is so important to keep the youth activism alive and to keep youth exchange alive, because I think that both of them are a key element of the European future of the country. Isolation, lack of communication contributes to the rise of nationalism, contributes to the rise of self-centered approach to each country. So I think that keeping the formats active and giving them to produce results in the education, in youth events, and in making innovative things together are important for the region at first place, but also for our European perspective. This is why I directed your attention towards programs like Erasmus Plus and all the others, and I would also support this kind of formats, but also whatever RICO can do more, we should always support it.
Thank you for the question and the answer. Yes, Maria.
Okay, so right now I would like to conclude of what all of your ministries had to say regarding what we have today proposed in front of you. First, I would like to address that. Thank you, Minister, Deputy Minister, Prime Minister, and for Minister of Education for the call of action of youth participation on projects. But I believe that the youth you see in front of you here today has been well incorporated in that sector. We've come here today to address the problem of the institutions not hearing our voice, only the NGO sector or the projects like Erasmus, which you propose to engage in our youth participation. But yes, we do this, we are good citizens, we are respectful for our society, for our communities, but we're not heard when we have opinions on topics regarding your institutional sectors and decision-making. For you, Minister of Ecology, as a representative of the Green Room, you are my target minister, so I will have to address you. But what the Prime Minister said, that you had the hardest job. Why have the hardest job when you have youth at your disposal? I think youth activism is mostly consistent of eco-activism. You have young people who are interested in the topic, who are working on fighting against pollution, climate change, and are criticizing topics and legislations that you are making. But why aren't you including them more in your work? Why? I mean, our initiative, the Green Ambassadors, is a step forward to have cooperation with you. But why for us to have this opportunity only given by the European Union to propose the initiative? On a day-to-day basis, we do not have such luxury. If you want to, yes.
My door is always open. You're welcome whenever you want. But you're right, though, you shouldn't have to take a meeting with the Prime Minister for you to actually be able to express yourself. The door is open. You're not only of help, but you are the future who's going to implement this. So we're expecting you not in the next few weeks. I'm expecting you Monday morning. Mimosa or Maria, was it, right? Yes, just so you know, 9 o'clock in the morning on Monday morning, I expect you guys in my office to discuss the topics then.
We have time for 2 quick questions and quick answers. So, yes, Damian.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I would first like to thank the European Ambassador, Mr. Gir, for this opportunity, as well Mr. Vassallo, And my question is to all the government representatives, the Prime Minister and the ministers. It's 2022, the European Year of Young People, and I agree with the Minister of Health that it's very important to take part in many events, and you're all invited to all the events the Young European Ambassadors, such myself, are organizing and taking part of. But what is the government and the ministers doing behind the closed doors with the young people? How are they open for our voices? How can our voices be heard, and how can we be integrated in the decision-making process? Is there opportunity that young people, such the Young European Ambassadors and even other initiatives taken by young people, be heard more loudly by the government in closed doors, such as today? Thanks.
Can I start first? So it's a very good question. And when we take the division on governance in the country, then we have the government as the executive part, the executive branch. Then we have the parliament, which is the legislative. And then we have the local municipalities plus the judicial system and the prosecution, which is fully independent. If we are talking simply about positions, then I can tell you that in my cabinet, dominantly are much younger people than me. And I would say that I work with young, very well educated people. So my chief of cabinet has finished high school in Hong Kong, and he has finished full university in the United States, and is Macedonian. This is valid also for the others which worked with me, so let's say the advisor for legal affairs and others. But also it's important that we have many young people which work also in the other ministries, because the younger people bring new mentality, and they always bring new energy, and they bring one very important thing which is called ambition. And when there is ambition, then there is always a higher achievement. When we are talking about policies, then on policies there are two sides. One are the government measures which are undertaken, and this is something which was explained by the ministers. There is one additional thing which I would mention, and this is the education, very important. And you know that always the topic is investments in education. But when I am discussing, especially with the trade unions in charge of education, I always want to discuss not only the remuneration, but also to discuss the performance. You know, all of you are aware about the results that when we measure the country against other countries, let's say in the PISA testing, that we are not performing well, but on the contrary. And this has to be addressed by all the players important in the educational system, not only the government, but also the schools, together with the teachers, and together with the parents as well. So this is something that we need to work on much more stronger. Another is the parliament. And Blendy I have met actually in parliament when they had the protests for the graduation exams, yes. And there we met for the first time, it was like 2 years ago, yes. No, it's more than 1 year. Now we are 2022, that was 2020, 21, beginning. Yes, it was beginning. So there we met. So I would say that the parliament is open, and you should use it more as part of the public debates which are organized. You should use also the opportunity to meet the members of parliament, as there are different commissions. There is also on education, on ecology, and so on. So they are by procedure open to discuss with different groups of interest, especially like you. And you should ask to be included in the public debates which are organized there, because this is the best place. Why? Because the legislation is made there. There is always direct broadcast of the sessions of the commissions. Some of them are aired later, but still they are on TV. And there your voice will be much louder, and it will be much more straight to the point because you will discuss specific law solutions and more specific articles which are affecting. Another thing which I find very important, and I've done this personally, and this was about gender balance in budgeting. And I make a parallel with young people balance in budgeting and in other measures. This is something which I would encourage the academia to make empirical studies to see where we are compared to other more developed countries, which we always take as a role model. So to see through numbers where we can improve, because the study which I made together with one renewed professor from the university where we work, and it was published, the paper by the Macedonian Academy of Science, it actually showed that we have to do much more in gender balance. So if somebody does this as well, we can see in which points we can improve on budgeting and other activities and measures which are undertaken in reference to financing and in reference of activating young activism in the country, which is very important. Regarding the municipalities, also you know that in municipalities there are councils. In these councils are elected councillors from you and from myself and from everybody else. So you should also approach them because they bring very important decisions for the environment where you live. So let's say I would say that I fully disagree with the decisions of many municipalities, the sport terrains in schools to be given to private companies to make restaurants out of them. And this is question clearly for the municipalities, and this should be addressed. And this is not anymore an exemption, but this is a rule, what is happening there. So that's why you should raise your voice as well. And then when you do it on a legislative level, when you do it on an executive level, and when you do it on a municipal level, then you will see how the results will be much better. If this satisfies your question as an answer.
Thank you, Prime Minister. My question was more focused on, is the government or the ministers, are the government and the ministers open to young people coming, for example, an open day or something similar where young people can express their thoughts and even be included in the policy making process?
So yes, I can tell you that now I will check my calendar. Tomorrow I have a big meeting with the Union of high school students. So it is open, and we will discuss issues which they will raise, because practically they asked for the meeting, and it's the same as today. On specific issues, yes, the government is open, and there will be no minister that will refuse a meeting on a specific issue with any interest group which comes from the young population. And now I'm thinking over to engage a number of internships, young internships in several sectors in the government, because this brings first new energy, but also it gives to the internees experience, much more needed, which makes them much better later in their professional career.
I may also add to the answer. It is because I'm also responsible and participating in a lot of strategies and policies that are being created. The government and the sector for strategic planning within the government is having a methodology for participatory decision-making and participatory strategic planning, so that all the big strategies within their methodologies, and this referred to the strategy for One Society for All and interculturalism, but it was also implemented during the creation and adoption of strategy for Roma integration, and it becomes a practice that this participatory making of the strategy is implemented as a now still not common and certified methodology, but it is a practice which is constantly building up. So this is the way how we include, among other, let's say, the youth participation. And very soon we will start the drafting of the new strategy in the new strategic cycle, and we are already regarding the public call for the NGO organization and other activists and individuals to get involved. So this is a practical example how we did it as well.
Thank you very much for all of your questions and the answers. I will give it in the end to close this session to Ambassador Gir, but before that, I will stop with thanking, because I think this is your duty to listen to the youngsters. It's not something that we should create some poems on thanking you all. And what I wanted to say is that Ambassador Gir, yesterday when you opened the breakfast pitching, you said that last year on the European Day we had this conference where youngsters spoke about the problems, and in the end of the day you all left and nothing was done after that. And you said that I won't let that happen again. So I will re-mention to what you said yesterday, that we won't leave it today here. We will pressure you all as ministers to start creating these ideas and putting it into function. So yes, be prepared for the pressuring part, because Prime Minister knows that, for example, he mentioned State Matura. He remembers that when we started pressuring about State Matura, lots of things happened. So be prepared for the pressuring part, because our ideas are very important, and we think that it will contribute to the improvement of the region on the three topics: mental health, better enhancement of the regional cooperation, and the better implementation of the Green Deal. So the word to you, Mr. Ambassador.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Blendi. Thank you, Maria and Mimosa as well, and the other young people here. It comes as no surprise, and the Prime Minister will not be surprised to hear me saying it, that this country has many assets. The beauty of the country, its natural wealth. I can go on forever on this subject, but the greatest asset you have are your young people, who I have learned are smart, not frightened to ask questions, and will not easily take no for an answer, which I think is a great quality. So I'd like to thank you for your engagement. That's the most important thing of all, and the contribution you're making to the future. And for us, the oldies, we have to keep asking ourselves that question is, are we good ancestors? Prime Minister, over to you.
First, thank you really for the interest to be here today, and to Blendi and his friends, to Ambassador Gir and his deputy, to all the heads of institutions. You know that before I became a president of the government and deputy minister of finance, before that I was a university professor. So usually professors, when they go to politics, they are not anymore professors, because then the approach is different. And I'm used to work with young people. One of them is here, one of my students. And I learned with the time to learn from them, because they always, and you always come with new ideas. Today's students are much more different than the students 15 years ago, because you are, due to the social media, due to the digital media, you are exposed to much more information, to much more knowledge. You are a generation which does not need visa to go to the European Union, as I needed Mr. Ambassador Gir and my colleagues. So you can go. Then the transport at that time was much more expensive. Now there are the low fare airlines. So the environment has changed quite more. The countries have passed over the biggest problems. I'm talking about the region, which we had, and now it's a time of working together. So this is another plus for you. And this altogether brings a big value for the country. So now if we talked about problems inside, now we can talk about development inside and development together with the others in the region, and that's what we are doing. As you see, most of my meetings are with the heads of states and the heads of governments from the region, besides the ones which I have with the leaders of the European Union and the leaders heads in the states. But it's very important to have a very open and close cooperation with the region. This proved to be very important, especially in this crisis. As you see that we are fighting it easily when we are together. When we talk about energy shortages, we sort it out together with the neighbors. When we talk about food shortages, then we sort it out them again together with the neighbors. And this is how we will continue. So when we talk about green agenda development, we have to sort it out together. When we talk about regional energy transition, then you saw that in Greece we were together, and the Bulgarian Prime Minister, Serbian President, and myself together with the Greek Prime Minister. When we started the investment on the 400 kilovolt connection with Albania, you noticed that the Deputy Minister of Energy of Bulgaria was also here, because it connects Corridor 8 in energy sense. And you will see that in all the big projects, when we are starting, all the neighboring either ministers, either leaders will be here, and we will be there, because now since we stabilized everything, now we have to work together in order first to work and to cooperate, to improve our capacity, because one day we will have to compete with the companies and with the knowledge within the European Union. And it's, let's say, much more challenging playground, and that's why we have to train and we have to improve first here in the region, and then stronger together go there. So thank you once again. And now at the end, I think that now is the end. I will invite you to make one tour so we see where we have the meetings of the government. Yes. Thank you.